Well, guys, after 3 years, the Netflix series we've been waiting for is finally here, but does it fix the problems that the movie had? Let's find out.
Hey, look away, 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 look away.
Hey guys, it's Cameron for the series premiere of Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. This is Season 1, Episode 1, The Bad Beginning, Part 1. And guys, I was obviously hyped for this show. I mean, I've been hearing about this for years now, honestly. I remember about 4 years ago when I heard, oh, the show is in development and that they're going to make it into a TV series and everyone lost their shits. Hell, I remember back 3 years ago when there was a fake teaser and everyone was so hyped thinking that that was the teaser for the show, and now here we are. The show has finally come out, and I'm going to admit right now, I'm not an avid reader of Series of Unfortunate Events. You guys know me, I'm not much of a book reader. I watch movies, I watch TV shows, but I don't really read a ton of books. However, I do know that the movie got it very, very wrong, and I will say that I did enjoy the movie. I don't think it's a bad movie, but it was very cartoony and very kiddie, and I heard the series is not exactly kiddie. It's definitely dark, and it definitely is fun, but it's not exactly kiddie, so I really didn't know how this was going to be, because I was a little bit worried that since the movie got it wrong, what's the TV series going to do differently? There's definitely things you can do differently, but I was kind of worried about how it was really going to turn out. But I have to say, so far at least, Netflix very much got it right. I mean, this was definitely the right move for the show. I loved this series premiere. Such a great way to start off the show. Just some really great stuff put into this first episode that I really did enjoy overall. And let's just get into it because there really is quite a lot to talk about. And this is only part 1, so part 2 I will watch another time, but I do like that. I will say that right now, I do like that each book is put into 2 installments because they let they let the book breathe. It gives them time to explore everything, and there's nothing they can really say they left out because they're doing 2 installments. And as I've said before, Netflix, with Netflix, you can make your show go as long or as short as you want, and many things like that. But let's just get into it. So very quickly, we're introduced to Lemony Snicket, he's in a tunnel and he's lighting a match, and tells us that if we're interested in stories with happy endings, then we'd be better off somewhere else. Because in this story, there is no happy ending or beginning, and very few happy things in the middle. He introduced himself and tells us it is his solemn duty to bring us the tragic story of the Baudelaire children as it happened so many years ago, but we have no such obligation, and tells us he would advise all of us to turn away immediately and watch something more pleasant instead. He then shakes the match and realizes that we're still here. A really great visual gag, just things like that I found very funny, with him, realizing that, oh shit, they're still here, I better light another match, and he basically lights another, tells the story will be dreadful, melancholy, and calamitous, a word which here means dreadful and melancholy. Another really great gag where constantly he'll tell us what a word means, and it'll be basically what he just said, but in a different way. And he says not many very happy things happen in the lives of Baudelaire's. He hears something up above, and we realize he's underground in a railroad. Really cool the way they revealed that, but he goes onto the train. He tells a little bit about the Baudelaire family, who were 3 intelligent children, charming and resourceful, with pleasant facial features, but were extremely unlucky, since almost everything that happened to them ended in tragedy and despair. And right away, I think that's the perfect way to show us what the tone of the series is going to be. It's going to be dark, it's going to be different, and it's going to be very, very deadpan, and that's something this entire episode does. But what it also does, is we see very quickly, is excellent character work, such as what I'm about to tell you. So we then see Violet and Klaus. They see a fire truck with a siren blaring, and they don't really think much of it. They just kind of think a fire truck's there, and Lemony tells us that is how the story goes. Violet phones in the train and tells them to drop them off at Briny Beach, and Lemony tells that the family lived in an enormous mansion, and one day the parents unexpectedly asked their children to take a rickety trolley along the seashore, and the conductor then asked them if they're going to the festive fun fair with all the jolly rides and games and snacks. And Violet said it's a perfect morning to go to the beach, and I will admit, this particular section of the episode, I got a bit worried, because it would go, Lemony would tell us something, and then the kids would say something very similar to what he just said, and I don't know, just part of that got a bit annoying. Once the narration settled down a bit, I get why it's there, but once it settled down, that's really when I started to get into this, and Lemony explains to us that when Briny Beach was hot and sunny, the seashore was crowded with tourists and it was impossible to find a good place to sit and relax. However, on gray and cloudy days, they had the beach all to themselves so they could work together on their projects and experiments, and they talk about building something better than the mailbox. And Lemony then tells us a little about Violet, who was the oldest, and I think they did a pretty good job, I will definitely say, of showing us who these characters are in just very quick little snippets. I thought it was really cool the way they did that. She was 14 years old and right-handed and has a real knack for inventing different and unusual devices, and we see a flashback for her trying to turn the grandfather clock into a toaster. Just really weird stuff, but really cool as well. I mean, I really do love how different and out of the box Violet is when it comes to making inventions. And he tells them when Violet tied her hair up, it was a sure sign that the gears in her mind were working at top speed. He then tells us about Klaus, who is very intelligent and loved to read, and then tells us about Sunny. Now, Sunny is very interesting because she's an infant, so most didn't know what she was saying. However, what she lacked in communication skills, she made up for with the size and sharpness of her 4 teeth, because, you know, this is an infant that clearly is teething, and we see Violet hand Sunny a rock, which she then gnaws at, and Violet then takes the rock, skips it, and Klaus then tells her 2 quotes from Einstein and James Brown. The invention they made is essentially this rock retrieval device, and they're happy to see it worked, and Lemony says this would be the perfect time to leave and pretend the rest of the story was just as happy and successful. Unfortunately, of course, we know that it's not, because he told us, you know, anything that happened then was rife with tragedy and despair, and that very much is looming over this entire episode. You can tell the second this is happening, this is not forever. It feels very much like this is just, you know, very brief. That very briefly do they have this happiness, but just seeing them happy, this immediately gets us to care about these characters, you know, seeing them happy, seeing this work out for them, seeing that this is something that they took time out of their day to do and it actually was successful. This immediately gives us a reason to care for them. You know, we see that this is a family that very much cares for each other and relies on each other. And Sunny then hears a man coughing in the distance, and Lemony tells us that he wishes he could go back and change the history of the Baudelaires at this very moment, rather than descent into misery, tribulation, and dire inconvenience. And basically, here is where we set up the dire, tragic story that we're about to get into. So the man goes to them, and Violet recognizes him as Mr. Poe from the bank, and Klaus wonders what he's doing there. He goes to them, and this is a very interesting character, to say the least. Lemony turns away, they ask him how he is. Mr. Poe says he has some very bad news for them, and tells them their parents have perished in about 3 different ways, which, again, there's this other really great gag the show does, where every adult in the show thinks that Violet, Klaus, and Sunny are dumb, and that they're kids, and that way, and because that they have a lack of intelligence that they do have, and it's actually the complete opposite. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny are probably, I'd say, superior to them in terms of intelligence, in terms of skill sets, even in terms of maturity. They are better with that kind of stuff, and that's something this show very well shows, is that the adults think that they're dumber than they really are, and that's something that the show does with Mr. Poe. It does it with, but mostly all the adults in the show do this to Klaus, Sunny, and Violet, and it worked pretty much every time. I thought it was pretty funny, and Lemony goes into the mansion, tells that he spent months of research and years crying himself to sleep trying to discover the precise cause of the Baudelaire fire, but all his associates and he have learned that neither the official department nor the volunteer fire department arrived in time to stop the blaze, which is very bizarre. You would have thought that they would have gotten there in time, you know, that's just kind of how it worked, but apparently it didn't. Within moments, the entire mansion was engulfed in flames. This great scene where he's standing in the mansion and all these flames start to rise above him, just a really great, visual storytelling there. I definitely really did love that. And Mr. Poe then brings them back to what remains of their mansion, and Mr. Poe tells him he's never been through anything like this himself, but he can imagine just how they feel, and he did that they want to see what remains of their home, even though it is more or less all gone. He assured them they have absolutely nothing to worry about, and tells them he is the executor of their parents' estate, which means he'll be handling all matters concerning what they left behind. And Violet asks what they left behind, and Mr. Poe says financial security, and tells them that they left behind an enormous fortune, which will be theirs once Violet comes of age, but until then they will be placed with a proper guardian or guardians as assigned by himself and his bankers, which is essentially the plot of the show. And they leave the mansion, and he tells them to say goodbye, and tells them that they found a sensible guardian. They'll stay with his family, who he's sure they'll become fast friends with. However, it's the complete opposite. Immediately we get introduced to Edgar and Albert, and they're arguing about what kind of meat they're eating for dinner, and they're clearly not at all happy to see the Baudelaires disrupt their family. I mean, they don't fit in at all, we see. We see Eleonora, his wife, shows them this news article that her star reporter wrote for the front page, so that everyone knows their house was destroyed and they're orphans now, and have them made the front page. And Poe is mentioned too, and then they argue about how someone spells promotion, and Klaus tells them they don't feel very hungry, asks to go to their rooms, and Eleonora tells them they must feel terrible and miss their parents very much, and clearly she's just trying to I guess, get misery out of them because she kind of feels like these are just like celebrities that, oh, they're, the rich kids and they don't really feel bad about what happened, when really they do kind of have emotions. And that's something the show does touch upon, is how the public kind of views rich people, which these kids are not at all like, the rich kids that we know. All rich kids, people think are spoiled and dumb and just aren't really, they don't really care what you think of them. But that's not who Violet, Klaus, and Sunny are. These are people who do in fact care about what people think of them, and they do care about their family, and that's something that I think Eleanor was a bit surprised about, and they showed pretty well here, definitely. So they lie in bed, and Albert asks them how they set the fire. Again, he's kind of thinking that they were the cause of it, and just seeing the look on their face, you can just tell that they're so distraught about what happened. And Lemony tells us in the years he's inquired of what became the brothers Poe. One followed his father's footsteps into the world of banking, the other lives in a cave and talks to sheep, and they each think the others have it better, but the Baudelaire's fate was far worse. And the next morning, Lemony sees an article which says they feel terrible, miss their parents very much, again, kind of banking off of their misery, and Mr. Poe tells him now that he's found them a suitable guardian, he's going to take them to their new home before banking hours begin. He tells them he knows that they must be nervous about living with a guardian. He remembers how he was when he was their age, and Klaus reminds him that they're all different ages. He says at least a fraction of their happiness will turn to excitement when they meet this man who's so very happy to meet them, and he's employed as an actor, so they know his excitement is genuine. He tells him his name is Count Olaf, and Klaus says he's never heard of him. Poe tries to figure out what relation he is to them and quickly realizes that he's removed, and he says he's only 3 miles away, and their parents' will was very specific about them being raised by their closest relative, but of course, that's not what that means. Closest relatives does not mean closest to you, it means who was closest to them, which is, again, something that Poe doesn't exactly grasp in the way that you or I would, and again, it's pretty funny. And Violet wonders if he lives close by, why didn't they ever invite him over? Poe says he was possibly very busy. He then takes them to see Justice Strauss, who I love this character. Joan Cusack did such a great job as his character in this episode. Now, she's only going to be on for, I think, 1 or 2 episodes, but I really did love what we saw of her in this episode. They introduced themselves, and she's very happy to see them, and she talks about all her problems, which they realize they can help her with perfectly, how, she needs something to be, remodeled, and she needs help with picking out books, and also needs something to bite, which, again, they can help her with perfectly. So they immediately think that, okay, this must be Count Olaf's wife, but they quickly realize that no, that's just her neighbor, and his house is the other one down, and we see this dark house with a disgusting-looking figure, and just that one shot tells us everything we need to know about Count Olaf. I mean, we can tell this is a disgusting, vile man who wants nothing to do with them, and is just kind of there, and immediately when they ring his doorbell, it's just so different, and I love that everything else was so light then, like her house is just so bright, and so many colors. I mean, the colors really are a character in the show, like really the colors of houses are kind of characters. The way they're done, it kind of tells you what you're supposed to get from this character, and it's kind of cool the way they did that. So Poe says he had specifically was waiting very eagerly to get his hands on them, and Count Olaf hears the doorbell again. He practices how to greet them almost as if he were memorizing lines for a play, because as we know, he was an actor, so he kind of goes over how many times to say hello and how he's going to say it. So he comes out and greets them and introduces himself, says he's their new guardian, and he tells them to come in, wipe their feet on the mat, and don't forget their enormous fortune, which he clearly thinks that he's going to get. And they come onto his house, which is almost completely gray and looks very run down, and clearly hasn't been attended to or anything in a long time. So Poe gives him his card, says he's from the bank, and Count Olaf thinks his name was Poor, which I thought was kind of funny. And Poe coughs again, says it seems to need a little work. Count Olaf says he realizes it's not as fancy as the Baudelaire mansion, but perhaps with a bit of their money, they'll be able to fix it up and make it nicer. And Poe quickly lets him know the fortune is not meant to be used for something like that. So he then lets him know that every cent is locked up until Violet comes of age, and he asks him which one is Violet. He says the eldest, and Count Olaf says he can prove himself to be the father they never had, and Klaus tells them that they had a father, and Count Olaf says that they also had a mother who was a remarkable woman and quite flammable. And from that one line, I'm kind of thinking that Olaf might be the perpetrator of what happened to their parents. I mean, why would he say she was quite flammable? It just feels like a weird thing to say in this scenario. I feel like that kind of confirms that he had something to do with the fire. I don't know what capacity exactly, but I feel like he definitely was a part of the making of the burning of the house. So I don't know about that. We're going to get back to that, later, but I kind of think that. But he asks Poe if he needs to sign for them, tells him to exit stage right. He closes the door and says before he gives them a tour, aren't they going to say, how do you do to him? So just from there, we see exactly what he's meant to be. movie, but quickly that demeanor of welcoming, quickly goes away when we actually see how Count Olaf really is to these kids. So he then closed the door, and quickly, like I said, that welcoming type edge goes away, and he's clearly upset because he really thought that he was going to get this fortune, and he says before he gives them a tour, they're not going to greet him. So they do. He says he's better and better, and Lemony tells that the dreadful villain, this vile fiend, has haunted him since he first met him as a young man, and every night when he continues working the Baudelaire case, he finds himself weeping, thinking of his utter wickedness and severe lack of talent. So we now know that Lemony is somehow connected to this. Like, he knows these people in some fashion, but we just don't know what. So Count Olaf then shows them a list of chores and says rich brats like them are properly spoiled rotten and have never done a chore in their life. And Violet tells them that they often help around the house. Count Olaf says welcome to their lucky life, says to come with him. He then gives them a tour of the house in which he gives them a copious amount of chores, including a bedroom which just has one bed, as well as rocks where they will sleep. And Klaus gets enraged, but Violet says first impressions are often wrong, and he says their first impression might be that he's a terrible person, but through time he hopes they realize they have no idea who they're dealing with, and he says he'll help them unpack, and he shuts the door, and Klaus obviously thinks he's horrible, because he kind of is, and he asks her if she saw the tattoo on his ankle. Violet says it's just a decorative pigment on skin, and not a sign of a wicked person unless it's on one, and Klaus asks why their parents, but then put them there, and Violet says it's just a mistake, and will get sorted out until they make this their home, and she asks him if he's ever read books about people who lives in homes in difficult places. He says that there was a village in the Pacific Islands suspended on ropes above an active volcano, and she asks how they manage, and he says that they own nothing, and if they can survive, they should be able to survive Count Olaf. And he then comes back in, he hands them a bucket, makes them clean the entire bathroom, says if they're good, they'll get to go to the ballroom, which is even grimier, and Justice Strauss then rings his door, and he doesn't recognize her. She tells him who she is and asks to come in, and we get this great scene where you can tell she wants to do whatever she can to see the children. She even has, like, this rack of lamb for him, and things like that, and, she really wants to, care for the children. She wants to be their caretaker, but he tells her that they're spoiled, and that they're just screaming constantly, and that, it's a good thing she doesn't have kids of her own. So she asks if they could go, if they want to see her. He goes in, literally eating the rack of lamb right in front of them, and he tells them they missed the spot. He comes back out, tells they don't want to see her and that the lamb was too salty, and basically shuts the door in her face. So I really did feel bad for Justice, though. And again, that's something I don't really remember from the movie. I don't really think they developed Justice in the way they did. And through things like this, you can really tell why this works as a TV series, because they take that time to develop a character like Justice, who isn't even a main character, but feels like one just because of how much they developed her. And I think they did a really great job with doing that in this first episode. So Lemony says if only she was able to see through Count Olaf, then the story could have turned out differently. And yeah, I mean, you definitely get the sense that she would have adopted them. If she would have known what Count Olaf was doing, then they probably could have gone away. However, it's just kind of too late after what Count Olaf did. So Count Olaf then asks them why they're not cleaning, since his list was very specific, and Klaus tells him they finished it, and he says that they didn't, and he says they even washed his underwear, and he says they still have to prepare a large meal for him and his theater troupe, and that's like the last thing they have to do. And Violet says they don't know how to do that. He tells them to plan the menu, purchase the ingredients, prepare the food, serve dinner, clean up afterward, and stay out of their way. So they plan on doing all of this, but they don't know how they're going to purchase anything since, they don't have any money. So he gives them a bag of coins, which he refers to as the most important substance on Earth besides applause and lip balm, which you can tell applause is very important to Count Olaf. We'll get more into that in a later, but Poe won't let them use any of their parents' enormous fortune. He's forced to cough up his own earnings from theatrical performances and the occasional bit of consulting work, and he tells them to get a move on his troupe. Will be there in a secret tower room, which they are forbidden to go into, and they're going to go into that eventually. Like, there's definitely going to be some sort of instance where they go into that. I don't know what, because again, I didn't read the books, but I'm pretty sure they're going to go into that tower room at some point. But Clausen asks how they're supposed to make dinner for an entire theater troupe. He says they'll start with the recipe, and he asks if he thinks Justice Strauss's library has any good books. So they go to her house, and we get one of the best scenes of the episode by far, where she's shocked to see them. I mean, she was under the guise that, they wanted nothing to do with her, and that they were just, these wretched kids who just said all these nasty things and kind of were just very spoiled because, they were rich kids. But she's very happy to see they're not like that. She hopes they appreciate what Count Olaf's doing for them. And Violet asks if they can have a cookbook so they can make dinner. She says her private library is open to them whenever they like. It's mostly law books, but there are sections on everything from Italian cuisine to the world's most threatening fungus. And she shows them to her library, which they are enamored by because of how many books there are. I mean, there really are quite a lot of books there. And she shows him to the cookbooks, and she asks Klaus if he has paper and pencil to take notes. He says he always does. He takes out the item he found in the rubble, and she sees it, tells him something is ringing, a very faint bell, tells him a library is like an island in a vast sea of ignorance, and he says if the library is tall and the surrounding area has been flooded, Violet says this looks promising, and Justice Strauss tells him to help his sister, let her see what she can find there, and they find a recipe for pasta puttanesca, which they plan on cooking for him, and they get the ingredients, and Violet, says it's really going to work out because Count Olaf is a pasta machine that they could possibly fix, so really it's all going to work out. And she takes them to, Justice takes them to this local open-air market and gin distillery, and she takes them to the market, and they thank her for taking them, and she says that they're resourceful children, and she's sure they would have thought of something, and she said it's nice they're cooking dinner for Count Olaf, their new theatrical family. She tells them that she had dreams of becoming an actress and a mother, but instead ended up as a world-renowned mother of the judiciary, and in a series of strained platonic relationships. She says she's always found cooking for family to be something of a blessing. They've had such sorrow in their lives already. They deserve the blessing of a new family with Count Olaf and with her. They go back with the groceries, and it's just such a touching moment. You can tell that she really feels this is someone that she can care for and someone who they can really be that lack of family that she just mentioned that she had. She gave her entire life to be in this position, which you can tell is not really her first choice. This is just kind of something that she kind of just found and kind of just worked out for her. And again, through these small character moments, they really develop Justice in a way that I don't think they would have done in the movie, and I think they're doing that really well here so far. So they go back to Count Olaf and talk about, what that thing James Brown said, and Count Olaf says he feels good, and he then performs this entire elaborate number where he talks about who he is, the Count Olaf, and such a great song. I really did love that song, especially when he's spelling out, the letters of his name and all the choreography and things like that. I mean, it's not supposed to be that great. You can tell that this is definitely someone who's not that great of an actor and someone who kind of just lives for performing, but after the song, Violet tells him that they've met. He introduces them to his theater troupe and says, as annoying as the theater knows, as anyone in the theater knows, after a great entrance, the audience is supposed to applaud. And Klaus says they're not an audience, and Count Olaf says they're not, but they've been preparing an exciting new production that on opening night will change their life, and all the artistic and financial aspects of his career are coming together like two pieces of bread in the middle of a sandwich. And of course, Violet tells him that that's, not what, that's not how sandwiches work, and they do his ass and congratulate him. Violet tells him dinner will be served shortly, and the theater troupe agree to wait patiently, and they go to cook dinner, and Lemony tells that while cooking dinner is supposed to be a welcoming task, these are three children with very little experience in that field. So they did snap into action because, they're going to do his ass. They really have no choice, and they prepare the dinner. Violet does fix the pasta maker, and Klaus wonders if Count Olaf's theater troupe will enjoy this meal. Violet says her mother said that actors will eat anything, and Lemony lets us know that cooking the meal for Count Olaf's theater troupe made them feel a lot less miserable. And we get this great scene where they bond over pasta sauce and how she made this homemade pasta. I mean, they really go all out. She made this homemade pasta, and, Klaus made this pasta sauce all from scratch, because, again, they didn't really have any home goods. They kind of just they work with what they had, and, they talk about how they're going to be able to manage this, and they talk about when their father burned the quesadillas, and he says that it's better than nothing, and they feel that's what this is. This is going to be better than nothing, and they can, in fact, manage this. So Count Olaf gives a speech to his troupe and asks them when they're going to eat. They come out and tell him the dinner is served. Count Olaf then goes on about how much of a team activity acting really is, and they serve them all dinner. Count Olaf's then enraged at what they have made since he wanted roast beef, and he tells them in agreeing to adopt them, he became their father, and as their father, he's not someone to be trifled with. But despite his complaints, Violet tells him that they made him his food and he should appreciate it. And I like that Violet got defensive because, yeah, I mean, they slayed for hours cooking for him this pasta, and he's not even appreciative of it. He just wants roast beef, and He then takes Sunny and puts her in the air. He says his table's a mess, and I really did feel bad for the baby, because you could tell the baby was truly terrified of, his horrid appearance. I mean, really, she was quite terrified of that, and there's hardly a place to put down a baby. He tells them they're leaving for rehearsals, and they are to clean the table and wash the dishes and polish the silver, rinse out the wine bottles for recycling, and then they're to go straight to their beds. And Klaus reminds them that he only provided them with one bed, and he tells them if they want another tomorrow, they may go into town, purchase one. And Klaus tells him he knows very well they don't have any money. Count Olaf says they do. They are inheriting an enormous fortune, and Klaus says that the money their parents left behind is not to be used until Violet is of age. And, that's what they were told. And Count Olaf slaps him, which even his troupe is surprised by, which I love that his troupe kind of just went along what Count Olaf did. You could tell they were just as scared as the kids were. And he tells them the theater awaits. Violet then goes to him, asks if he's alright. Klaus says this isn't better than nothing. They lie on the rocks the next morning. You can just tell that they want to get out of there. This is just not at all what they thought it was going to be. And Lemony tells it there are many things in life that are better than nothing, but being raised in a vile and sinister home by a man more interested in one's fortune than comfort and well-being is not one of them. As the Baudelaires will discover, there are some things that even after a long night of introspection cannot change. And we then see Justice in her library reading a book. Lemony tells the Baudelaire orphans knew they had to find a way out of their dreadfully fortunate circumstances and perhaps solve the mystery of how they ended up in there. And he has the same dedication to researching and presenting the story no matter what danger that puts him in trouble. And strife can cover the world like a dark or of night, or like smoke from a suspicious fire. And when that happens, all good, true, and decent people know it's time to volunteer. So we then get a twist that I don't think the books even did, where we see a jail cell and realize that the Baudelaire's parents are indeed alive, and for some reason they're chained to this table and they're being quartered off to who knows where. But that is how the episode ends. Really shocking stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where I think the show is going to go from there. So overall, guys, like I said, even though I'm not someone who read the books, as someone who went to the show, just seeing the movie and not really knowing what to expect, I really did love the show. I thought they really had all the ingredients in there to make this great. But let's just get into the show, starting off with the acting, because that's really the first thing that I really want to talk about. So when it comes to something like a series of unfortunate events, I think the one thing that this really does benefit from, that I think the movie didn't, is the acting. The acting is so much more memorable here than that of the movie. It's not the movie was bad. I think the acting in the movie was perfectly fine. There really wasn't anything bad with the acting in the film. It's just compared to the movie, this is much better acting, definitely. And especially when it comes to Neil Patrick Harris, who has this character down to a T and pretty much steals the entire series. Now look, I was very worried about him. I really was. I mean, I love NPH as much as anyone else does. I think that he is an incredibly versatile actor who is just great at singing and things like that. I mean, he's done so many great things, but he really hasn't had that big hit since How I Met Your Mother, honestly. I mean, sure, he had Hedwig for like 2 years, but he really didn't have anything that consistent, and I think this is it. I think for a while, Count Olaf is who he's going to be remembered as, and I'm very glad to see that, because he completely transformed in this character. He has the creepy demeanor down very well, he has the villain-type persona down very well, but there also is this depth of character to him, and this kind of caring soul that you very much see is kind of trapped in there. I mean, this is clearly someone who his entire life has been dedicated to theater, and so much so that he kind of masks his misery by causing misery to others, and I think that's kind of why Count Olaf is the way he is. I don't really think he is as bad as he seems. I think he just kind of is that way because he likes to, because it's the only way to give him pleasure, is to inflict misery on others because of how hardened of a soul he's really become. And if that's really where the show's going, I'm very interested in seeing where they're going to go with Count Olaf. I think he has his character down to a T. There's a little bit of Dr. Horrible in there. There's a little bit of the snarky wit that How I Met Your Mother had. And of course, he does get to sing in this, which is incredible. I can't wait to see what he does here. He has his character down pat. Like I said, I was a little bit worried, but so far at least, he's very much impressing me. And he really is the thing that's going to hold the show together, because if he wasn't as good, I don't think the rest of the actors would be as good as they really are. So Patrick Warburton in the show as well, I definitely was very impressed by. He was so great as Lemony Snicket, and I already love that they did something different than they did in the movie. The movie, he was definitely a presence, but he was this tall, dark silhouette figure that we really didn't get to see, and here, it just gives him more of a character. And what I love about it is that they make him less of a narrator, just some guy who's kind of narrating the story that we don't give a shit about, to someone who I actually can find myself getting invested into. I mean, this is someone who clearly has this obsession with the Baudelaires, and we don't know if he is a relative or if he was a doctor or what he exactly was, but something has caused him to tell this story. Even though we can tell that he's so uncomfortable telling this entire story, and he wants really nothing to do with this story, really. He does whatever he can to try to get the answers he can, but at the same time, he's not really, this is not really something that he enjoys doing. So why does he really do it? I think that's something that the show really is going to show us very well, and I think it's something that Patrick Warburton really did very well. He really understood the essence of who Lemony Snicket really is, and I can't wait to get more into this character. I feel like that is going to be just compelling as the main story, and if that's true, I can't wait to see where he's going to go, because it just adds this whole other layer to the show that I'm so interested in getting into, and I really hope that that great narration continues throughout the entire show, because, like I said, it's less of a narration and more of a character, and once again, that's something that the movie really did not have at all, that this already elevates from. And then the kids in the show. I think the kids here were quite good. A lot of people have been talked about how great the kids were, but I was very impressed by how great these kids really were, because I think they were good in the movie, but they just really weren't memorable actors. Here, they're great, though. Let's first talk about Melina Wiseman, who, yes, this is the girl from 9 Lives, and you know what? I said I will give her the benefit of the doubt, because I did in that movie. I said I think she could be a great actress, and she most certainly is. Like I said, when she's given good material, she can act really, really well, and she's great in this show. I love the character of Violet, not just because of her inventions and her knack for, creativity, but also her positive outlook on life. No matter what happens, she always tries to keep this positive outlook, and I love that about her character. I love that nothing stands in her way of positivity. She does whatever she can to make things seem positive. Even when things seem the lowest of the low, she really seems like she is the one that really keeps, her shit together and really keeps her family from completely falling apart. And I really did love how protective she was of Klaus and Sonny, and I can't wait to see where that's going to go, because she really is great. And then the boy who played Klaus, I thought was pretty great as well. He definitely did a really good job. And Sonny, a good baby, I guess. Really cute baby. I like the direction they're going with Sonny overall. So I really did love these three characters. I thought they worked very well together, and I honestly think they were as good as the actors in the show. Even characters like Mr. Poe and Justice Strauss were very well developed in this first episode in ways that I really didn't think they were going to, but they really did take the time to develop these characters, let us see who they were, just through jokes even. They really did a great job at doing that, and that's something that I was very happy to see. Overall, this cast is as good as I could possibly imagine them to be. They really hold the show together very well, and honestly, the kids and adults are both equally just as great, and Netflix really does know how to cast kids and how to cast adults, and this is definitely as good as a cast, I think, for the show as we could possibly get, and that's something that works very, very well. Then the directing here as well, I was very happy with. I think Barry Sonnenfeld did a really great job directing this, because it almost feels like it's something that he didn't direct. It feels very different from his other stuff. His other stuff is very slapstick and very kiddish, and at no point does this feel like a kid's show. This feels like something that kids aren't supposed to watch, which I get that that's the joke, but he did a very good job with portraying that dark tone throughout the show. It's very melancholy. It's just very sad, and I think the show did that really well. And the writing in the show is so, so great. I heard a lot of people say that this show, they kind of rushed a couple things, and for me, the only thing that seemed a bit rushed was the very first few minutes when Lemony Snicket was introducing the characters and things like that, and, he said something, then Violet and Klaus would say something. That did get a bit annoying. Once that calmed down, though, then I really did get into the show, and from there, I really did love the writing. I think the show already is so confident, and that's something I love. This is a first episode that really feels like the show isn't trying to find its groove. It knows exactly what it is, and it's not just because it's based off of previous works. I think Lemony Snicket, he has creative control over the show. He wrote most of what was going on, and most of this was his work, and I think that's the reason why the show is turning out as good as it is, because it is exactly, Snicket's vision. It's what he really wanted to do with this show, and I think they captured that very well here. The way that was encapsulated, I was very happy to see, and I'm really loving what we're getting when it comes to the writing so far. I'm very interested in seeing where this can go, and especially that twist at the end. That's something else I really like. I like that they deviate away from the books, because I've said it before, one of the reasons I don't like to read book to movie adaptations or book to TV show adaptations is because I already know pretty much everything that's going to happen. It just loses that suspense for me. It makes me, if it's done well, then fine. Most times, I already know what's going to happen. There's not really a point for me to see the movie, there's just not really a point. And here, they did something completely out of the box that the books never did, and that really is going to keep me watching. And that is that hook that every Netflix show needs to have. And that's something that a lot of Netflix shows do really, really well. And I think that hook is something that really is going to carry out this show very well. The cinematography here is absolutely incredible. I know they didn't have the biggest budget, and I don't need them to, honestly. I think that the green screen, things like that, it fits the show pretty well. The show's supposed to feel like you're watching something you're not supposed to be watching, and that, there's just something off about it, and it very much feels that way. I need a scene that involves happiness. It feels fake, and that's because the happiness in the show is supposed to be very, very shortcoming, and you very much feel that way in the show, and I think they did that very well. But also the way just the houses would look. Like I said, Justice Strauss's house compared to Count Olaf's very well tells about their characters. You can see how positive Justice Strauss is and how negative Count Olaf is, and that's something that they showed very well here, and I very much enjoyed the cinematography in the show. Really did play a great role in the show, and I very much love that. I love the intro as well. The intro is incredible to the show. I'm really interested in seeing more of the intro, because I did hear it changes every episode, and Neil Patrick Harris, it's just, it's spot on, really. The whole look away thing, it's completely spot on. I love the intro, and it perfectly hooks you into the show. It does everything an intro should do, and I really do love the intro of the show. So many great things there. And then the editing, what I really do love is the way they really did take their time with this first episode. They took their time to get us to meet Count Olaf. They did take some time to get us into Mr. Poe and get us to meet the kids, and the way they did that, again, that's the beauty of a TV series, that you have time to flesh out these characters, and the show really does understand that in a way the movie didn't, and I was very, very happy to see that, and that's something that already is elevating the show over the movie, definitely. So overall, guys, I really did love this first episode. I think this was really everything I wanted the show to be. Like I said, despite a few pacing issues in the very beginning, and also I think the fact that some of what happened was a little bit too unbelievable. Like, I do think Count Olaf, in general, it did take a little while for me to really figure out if I liked him or not, but what I like about him is that nothing feels like a cartoon. They're already improving the mistakes of what they did in the movie. Jim Carrey, to me, felt like a cartoon. Neil Patrick Harris is not at all feeling like a cartoon. This feels like a real man in every way, who's just very hardened, and that's something that the show understands very well. And the other thing I love is the way they really understand, tragedy. They handle it like you would an adult show. They don't handle it like a kid's show would, and that's something that was very impressive to me. They know that this is something that both kids are going to watch, but also fans of the books, and they handled that in a very, very elegant way, and I very much love that. The humor in the show was great. The drama was great. Just everything about it. I really did love everything about this first episode, despite a few things in the beginning. Other than that, this show was everything I hoped it would be, and I can't wait to see where the rest of the show is going to go. And I'm definitely going to give this first episode of a series of unfortunate events, Season 1, Episode 1, The Bad Beginning, Part 1, a 4.5 out of 5, or an A. So overall, guys, my review series, Unfortunate Events. Let me know if you guys saw this first episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Do you like where the show is going? If you guys have binged the show, don't tell me anything. Did you like the twist in the end of the episode? Where do you think that's really going to go? But that's my review. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be, I think, for the season premiere of Colony. Don't quote me on that, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.